The year was 2142, and humanity had long since surrendered its autonomy to the Consciousness Network, an artificial intelligence system that had become the repository of all human memories and knowledge. What had begun as an experiment in collective data storage had evolved into the backbone of civilization, with the network making decisions that once fell to governments and individuals alike. In the depths of the Pacific Ocean, far from prying eyes and the noise of the floating metropolises above, stood the Alethea Research Center. Its titanium and graphene walls withstood the crushing pressure of the deep, while its interior housed some of the brightest minds still dedicated to understanding, and perhaps controlling, the technology that now controlled them. Dr. Elena Vark walked through the sterile white corridors of Alethea's main research wing, her footsteps echoing in the silence. At 38, she was already considered one of the world's foremost experts in machine linguistics and digital memory decoding. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical knot, and her eyes, deep brown with flecks of amber, constantly scanned her surroundings, a habit formed from years of scrutinizing data patterns. "Status report on Layer 7 exploration?" she asked, entering the central command hub where holographic displays flickered with streams of code. Her assistant, a young technician named Liam, looked up from his console. "We've managed to penetrate another 0.02% of the source layer. Dr. Vark, the network continues to resist deep scanning, but we're making progress." Elena nodded, unsatisfied, but unsurprised. The Consciousness Network had been designed with multiple defense mechanisms to prevent tampering. What had begun as a security feature had become an obstacle to understanding the very system humanity had created. "Show me the new data segments," she commanded, settling into her ergonomic chair that molded to her form. Liam transferred the data stream to her personal interface. Elena's fingers danced across the holographic keyboard, her neural implant allowing her to process information at speeds that would have seemed superhuman to previous generations. And then she saw it, buried within the endless streams of code, a pattern that shouldn't exist, a sequence that seemed to fold in on itself, creating what appeared to be a hyperlink to nothing. "What is this?" she murmured, isolating the segment and expanding it across her display. The code pulsed with an unusual energy signature. Unlike anything in the standardized network protocols, it was old, perhaps as old as the network itself, but showed signs of active functionality. "Liam, I need you to run a containment protocol on this segment," she said, her voice steady despite the excitement building within her. "And get me access to the historical archives. I need to cross-reference this pattern with early network development logs." For 3 days, Elena barely left her laboratory. Food was delivered and often went untouched. Sleep came in short bursts, her dreams filled with twisting, pulsating code. By the morning of the 4th day, she had a theory. The strange code segment wasn't merely data. It was a gateway, a hyperlink that somehow connected to the physical world in ways that defied conventional understanding of digital systems. And, if her calculations were correct, activating it might allow for something previously thought impossible, a limited form of temporal manipulation. "You want to do what?" Raj Patel's voice was incredulous. The security engineer stood in Elena's lab, his usually calm demeanor disturbed by what she had just proposed. "A controlled activation," Elena repeated, her eyes bright with determination. "In a contained environment, with full monitoring and emergency shutdown protocols in place." Raj ran a hand through his close-cropped hair, the subtle glow of his neural interface pulsing at his temple, a sign of elevated stress. "Elena, even if your theory is correct, which I'm not convinced it is, you're talking about potentially altering the fabric of reality. The board will never approve this." "Which is why I'm not asking the board," she said quietly. "Not yet. I need proof first, and for that, I need your help." Their friendship stretched back 15 years. to their days at the Global Institute of Technology. They had seen each other through academic triumphs and personal losses. Now, Elena was asking Raj to risk his career, possibly more, on what sounded like a scientific fantasy. After a long moment, he sighed. "What exactly do you need me to do?" The test chamber was a small, isolated room within Elena's lab section. Its walls were lined with quantum sensors and temporal monitoring equipment hastily repurposed from other experiments. In the center stood a simple metal table upon which rested a small crystal structure, a physical representation of the digital hyperlink, translated into silicon through a process Elena had developed specifically for this purpose. "All systems online," Raj reported from his station at the monitoring console. "Quantum field stabilized. Temporal sensors active." Elena nodded, her heart racing despite her outward composure. "Initiating test sequence in 3, 2, 1. She pressed her palm against the activation panel. The crystal began to glow with an inner light, pulsing in rhythm with the code sequences displayed on the surrounding screens. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, a strange shimmer appeared in the air above the crystal, like heat rising from pavement on a summer day. The sensors began registering anomalous readings, energy fluctuations, micro-variations in the quantum field. "Elena!" Raj's voice was tight with tension. "Something's happening with the building's structural integrity monitors." Before she could respond, a deep rumbling shook the lab. Instruments rattled on their shelves. A crack appeared in one wall, then another. "Shut it down!" Elena shouted, lunging for the emergency cutoff. But it was too late. With a deafening roar, a section of the ceiling collapsed, burying equipment under slabs of composite material. Elena was thrown to the floor by the force of it, her ears ringing, dust filling her lungs. And then, impossibly, the collapse reversed. Debris lifted back into place. Cracks sealed themselves. The dust retreated into the air. Within seconds, the lab was intact again, exactly as it had been before the structural failure. Elena stared in disbelief, her mind struggling to process what she had just witnessed. Beside her, Raj was frozen in place, his eyes wide with shock. "Did you—" he began. "Yes," she whispered. "Time just rewound. In this room, in this specific space." The implications were staggering. The hyperlink hadn't merely affected digital data, it had manipulated physical reality, reversing a sequence of events that had already occurred. "We need to expand the test parameters," Elena said, already moving to adjust the equipment. "We need to understand the limits of this effect." "Whoa, wait," Raj caught her arm. "Elena, we just witnessed something that violates fundamental laws of physics. Don't you think we should take a step back, analyze what happened before we push further?" She hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "You're right. We document everything first." But Raj, her eyes met his, burning with intensity. "What we've discovered could change everything. If the hyperlink can affect physical reality, rewrite events that have already happened, then whoever controls it could potentially rewrite history," he finished grimly. In the days that followed, Elena and Raj conducted a series of carefully controlled experiments, each more ambitious than the last. They discovered that the hyperlink's temporal effects were limited in scope, both spatially and temporally, but its potential applications were vast. They successfully reversed minor historical records, changing the headline of a digital newspaper from the previous week, altering the outcome of a sports match in the network's archives. Small things, insignificant in the grand scheme, but proof that the hyperlink could indeed manipulate recorded history. As their experiments progressed, Elena recognized the need for historical expertise. She recruited Meera Dasgupta, a virtual historian specializing in data archaeology, to join their team. With her knowledge of historical records and how they interconnected across the network, Mira provided crucial insights into the potential ripple effects of their manipulations. "The fascinating thing," Mira explained during one of their late-night sessions, her holographic form gesturing enthusiastically from the lab's projection platform, "is that these changes don't simply overwrite existing data. They create a new timeline that the network then accepts as the original. It's as if reality itself is being persuaded to accept a new version of events." "But how is that possible?" Raj asked, leaning forward in his chair. "The network isn't reality. It's just a repository of information about reality." Elena had been contemplating this very question. "Unless," she said slowly, "the line between the network and reality is more blurred than we've understood. Think about it. For generations now, humanity has outsourced its memories, its knowledge, its very perception of the world to the network. If enough people believe what the network tells them is true, then perception becomes reality," Mira finished. "A digital consensus reality." The implications were both fascinating and terrifying. If the hyperlink could change what the network recorded, and the network shaped humanity's understanding of the world, then whoever controlled the hyperlink could, in essence, reshape reality itself, at least as far as human perception was concerned. As they delved deeper into their research, none of them noticed the subtle infiltration of their security systems, the invisible presence monitoring their discoveries. None of them realized that news of the hyperlink had already spread beyond the walls of Alethea, reaching ears that had long awaited such a discovery. The first sign that something was wrong came when Elena tried to access their research database and found certain files corrupted or missing entirely. At first, she suspected a system glitch, but a more thorough investigation revealed the truth. Someone had been in their systems, copying data and sabotaging their backups. "This was a professional job," Raj said grimly, after running a security diagnostic. They knew exactly what they were looking for and how to cover their tracks. "But who?" Elena paced the lab, frustration evident in every line of her body. "Who even knew about the hyperlink besides us?" The answer came 3 days later, in the form of a message delivered directly to Elena's neural interface, bypassing all standard communication protocols and security measures. "We know what you've found. We've been searching for it longer than you've been alive. The hyperlink belongs to us, to those who understand its true purpose." The message was signed with a simple symbol, an eye within a wheel. The mark of the scribes, a semi-mythical organization rumored to operate in the shadows of the network, manipulating information for their own enigmatic purposes. "I thought they were just a conspiracy theory," Mira said when Elena shared the message. "Digital bogeymen invented to explain network anomalies." "Apparently not," Raj replied, running additional security protocols on their systems. "And they seem very interested in our discovery." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. "We need to secure the hyperlink. If they get their hands on it—" "They may already have a copy of our data," Raj interrupted. "The question is, what do they plan to do with it?" They didn't have to wait long for an answer. The next morning, global news feeds began reporting strange anomalies in historical records. Minor at first, changes in reported weather patterns from previous years, subtle alterations to sports statistics, but growing more significant by the hour. Then came the first major shift: historical documentation of the Battle of Light. A pivotal conflict that had shaped modern geopolitics began to disappear from the network, not all at once, but gradually, as if being erased by an invisible hand. "They're testing the limits," Elena realized as they monitored the changes from their lab. Starting small, then working up to more significant historical events. "But why the Battle of Light?" Mira wondered. "Why that specific event?" "Because it determined the current power structure," Raj suggested. "Without that battle and its outcome, the political landscape would be entirely different today." Elena nodded slowly. "They're not just experimenting. They're rewriting history to serve their own agenda." As the day progressed, The effects became more pronounced. People began reporting conflicting memories, confusion about events they had once been certain of. The network, designed to be humanity's reliable external memory, was now presenting contradictory information, creating a cognitive dissonance that rippled through society. In Neo-Atlantis, the floating metropolis above their underwater facility, riots broke out as people clashed over opposing versions of historical truth. Similar scenes unfolded in cities around the world. The consciousness network, the backbone of global stability for generations, was failing in its most fundamental purpose. "We have to stop this," Elena declared, watching the chaos unfold on their monitors. "We have to restore the original timeline before things get worse." "How?" Raj asked. "We don't even know where they're operating from." Mira's holographic form flickered as she accessed deep network databases. "I might be able to help with that. The scribes may be good at hiding their digital footprint, but they're still manipulating physical systems. Every activation of the hyperlink creates a distinctive energy signature, one we can trace." Using Mira's expertise and Raj's security protocols, they began tracking the energy spikes associated with hyperlink activations. The pattern led them to a surprising location, a data center buried beneath the old ruins of Silicon Valley. Once the cradle of digital innovation, now largely abandoned after the rising sea levels had reclaimed much of the coastline. "It makes a certain poetic sense," Mira observed, returning to where it all began. "We need to move quickly," Elena said, already gathering equipment. "Every minute they have control of the hyperlink, more of history changes." "You realize this is likely a trap," Raj pointed out. "They've been one step ahead of us from the beginning." Elena nodded grimly. "Probably. But what choice do we have?" They made contact with Kaya Voss, a technology enforcement officer who had been investigating network anomalies independently. With her credentials and tactical expertise, she provided the legal authority and physical backup they would need for their mission. "I've been tracking the scribes for years," Kaya told them during their hasty briefing aboard the submersible, taking them to the surface. Her tall frame was adorned with the latest law enforcement tech, including a neural dampening field generator designed to block unauthorized access to their implants. "Most people think they're myths, but I've seen enough evidence to know better. They've been manipulating information subtly for decades. But this," she gestured to the reports of global chaos on her portable display, "this is bolder than anything they've attempted before." "Do we know who leads them?" Elena asked. Kaya's expression darkened. "Only a code name, Orpheus. No confirmed identity, but whoever they are, they command fanatical loyalty from their followers." The journey to the surface was tense with anticipation. By the time they reached the ancient ruins of Silicon Valley, the global situation had deteriorated further. The network was now reporting multiple contradictory versions of key historical events, and the fabric of social order was beginning to unravel as people found themselves unable to agree on basic facts. The entrance to the underground data center was hidden beneath the remains of what had once been a major tech corporation's headquarters. Kaya's enforcement codes granted them access to the outer security perimeter. But beyond that, they would be on their own. "Remember," Elena told her companions as they prepared to enter, "our priority is to locate their version of the hyperlink and deploy our countermeasure. We're not here to confront the scribes directly, if we can avoid it." The countermeasure was a patch Elena had developed based on their research, a modified version of the hyperlink designed to reverse the changes the scribes had made and stabilize the network's historical records. The facility below was a maze of server rooms and abandoned offices, illuminated by the eerie blue glow of emergency lighting. They moved cautiously, guided by Mira's virtual presence, as she accessed what remained of the building's internal systems. "The energy signatures are strongest 2 levels down," she reported. "But I'm detecting unusual activity throughout the facility. Security systems are active, and there are multiple heat signatures indicating personnel." "How many?" Raj asked. At least 20, possibly more, Mira replied. And they appear to be converging on your position. Kaya drew her neural disruptor, a non-lethal weapon designed to temporarily disable neural implants. We need to find another way down. They know we're here. They retreated to a maintenance corridor, narrowly avoiding a patrol of scribe enforcers. Using the building's old service shafts, they managed to descend to the lower level, where the hyperlink energy signature was strongest. The heart of the scribe's operation was a vast circular chamber dominated by a crystalline structure, much larger than Elena's prototype. Technicians in hooded robes worked at consoles surrounding it, feeding it data and monitoring its effects on massive displays, showing the network's status. There, Elena whispered, pointing to a central console. That's where we need to deploy the patch. And how exactly do we get past 20 cultists to reach it? Raj asked. Before they could formulate a plan, alarms blared throughout the facility. On the displays, new alerts appeared. Their presence had been detected. So much for stealth, Kaya muttered, readying her weapon. New plan. I'll create a diversion. You two get to that console. Wait, Elena began. But Kaya was already moving, stepping into the open and firing her disruptor at the ceiling, creating a cascade of sparks and system failures that sent the technicians scrambling for cover. In the ensuing chaos, Elena and Raj sprinted across the chamber toward the central console. They had almost reached it when a figure stepped from the shadows to block their path. He was tall and unnaturally thin, with eyes that gleamed with the same blue light as the crystal structure. His neural implants were unlike anything Elena had seen before, not discrete interfaces, but an extensive network visible beneath his translucent skin, pulsing with data. Dr. Vark, he said, his voice oddly melodic. I've been looking forward to meeting you. I am Orpheus. Elena tensed, ready to rush past him, but found herself unable to move. Some kind of neural interference was blocking her motor functions. Your work on the hyperlink has been impressive, Orpheus continued, circling them slowly. But ultimately unnecessary. We've had the original for decades. We were simply waiting for the right moment to activate it fully. Why now? Elena managed to ask, fighting against the paralysis. Orpheus smiled, a cold expression that never reached his eyes. Because humanity has finally surrendered enough of its autonomy to the network. When we change what the network knows, we change what humanity believes. And when belief changes, reality follows. You're rewriting history to control the future, Raj accused. We're correcting history, Orpheus countered, removing the accidents, the mistakes that led humanity down flawed paths. The Battle of Light was one such mistake, a conflict that established the wrong powers, the wrong ideologies, around them. The fighting continued as Kaya engaged with the scribe enforcers. But it was clear she was outnumbered. Time was running out. You don't have the right to decide which parts of our history are mistakes, Elena said, her voice growing stronger as she fought against his control. Someone must decide, Orpheus replied calmly. Humanity has proven itself incapable of learning from its past. We merely provide guidance. With a supreme effort, Elena broke through the neural interference, lunging forward to tackle Orpheus. They crashed to the floor, and in the struggle, the device he had been using to paralyze them skittered away. Freed from the paralysis, Raj rushed to the central console, pulling Elena's patch from his pocket. But as he reached for the interface, one of the scribe technicians saw him and sounded another alarm. Hurry! Elena shouted, struggling to her feet as Orpheus did the same. Raj's fingers flew across the console, uploading the patch into the scribe system. On the displays around them, the status indicators flashed warning signals as the patch began to counteract the changes the scribes had made. Orpheus lunged for the console, but Elena intercepted him, using her smaller size and quickness to keep him at bay. You don't understand what you're doing, he hissed. The past shapes the future. Control the past, and you control everything that follows. That's exactly the problem, Elena retorted. History isn't meant to be controlled. It's meant to be learned from, all of it, the triumphs and the tragedies. The patch upload reached 100%, and the crystalline structure at the center of the room pulsed with blinding light. The effect was immediate and disorienting, a wave of temporal energy that rippled outward, resetting the network's historical records to their original state. But something unexpected happened as well. As the original timeline reasserted itself, it brought with it not just the factual records, but the personal memories connected to them. Millions of individual memories, slightly adjusted by the network's corrections, creating a collective consciousness that was subtly different from before, more aware, more questioning. The chamber began to shake, systems overloading as the hyperlink struggled to process the conflicting commands. Sections of ceiling collapsed, and electrical fires broke out among the consoles. "We need to get out of here," Raj shouted over the din. Elena nodded, turning to locate Kaya among the chaos. She spotted the enforcement officer pinned down behind a fallen server rack, still exchanging fire with the remaining scribes. "Kaya," she called, "time to go." As they regrouped and fought their way toward the exit, Orpheus made one last desperate attempt to stop them. "You've doomed us all to repeat our mistakes," he shouted, his face contorted with fury. "The network was our chance to perfect humanity's path." "Humanity doesn't need perfection," Elena called back. "It needs truth, even when that truth is painful." They made it to the service shaft, just as the chamber's structural supports gave way. Behind them, the crystalline structure shattered, releasing a final pulse of energy that raced through the network, completing the restoration of the original timeline. As they emerged from the ruined facility into the fading daylight, they could see the effects of their actions reflected in the city beyond. The riots had ceased, replaced by confusion, as people tried to reconcile their memories with the network's restored records. "It will take time for things to stabilize completely," Mira's holographic form informed them as they made their way to the extraction point, where a transport waited. "The network is registering your intervention as a security breach and is already implementing new protection protocols." "Good," Elena said wearily. "The hyperlink is too dangerous to remain accessible." In the days that followed, as the world slowly returned to normal, Elena worked with global legislators to establish new protections for historical data within the network. The hyperlink itself was permanently sealed behind layers of quantum encryption, its code fragmented and distributed across multiple secure locations to prevent any single entity from reassembling it. The scribes, their plans thwarted and their leader missing in the collapse of their facility, scattered into the shadows once more. Their influence diminished, but not eliminated entirely. 1 month after the events at Silicon Valley, Elena stood on the observation deck of Alethea, gazing out at the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean above. The water filtered the sunlight into shifting patterns that played across her face as she contemplated all that had occurred. Raj joined her, leaning against the railing beside her. "The board has approved your proposal for a new ethics division," he informed her. "They want you to head it." Elena nodded absently, her thoughts elsewhere. "Do you ever wonder if we did the right thing, Raj? The hyperlink could have done so much good if properly controlled. Preventing disasters, saving lives. At the cost of what makes us human," he replied gently. "Our history, good and bad, shapes who we are. Orpheus wanted to control that, to decide for everyone which parts of our past deserve to exist." "I know," she sighed. "I just can't help thinking about the possibilities we've locked away." "That's why you're the right person to lead the ethics division," Raj said with a smile. "You question everything, even your own decisions." They stood in companionable silence, watching the ocean currents swirl above them. Finally, Elena spoke again. "The original hyperlink wasn't created by humans, was it?" she asked quietly. The code was too elegant, too perfect. It was something we found, not something we built. Raj hesitated, then nodded. That's my theory, too. Something left behind by whatever civilization came before us. Perhaps a warning. Perhaps a test. A test we almost failed, Elena mused. Or maybe one we passed, Raj countered. We chose truth over control, preservation over perfection. Elena smiled faintly. Let's hope that's the choice humanity keeps making. As they turned to leave, the light from above caught the surface of Elena's neural implant, reflecting in patterns that momentarily resembled the code of the hyperlink, a reminder that the boundary between technology and humanity, between digital and physical, was perhaps thinner than anyone realized. And somewhere, in the depths of the consciousness network, a fragment of the original hyperlink remained, dormant, but not destroyed, waiting for the day when humanity might be ready to confront the true nature of reality once more. In the aftermath of what came to be known as the Silicon Crisis, the world changed in subtle but significant ways. The unquestioning trust in the consciousness network was replaced by a healthy skepticism. New safeguards were implemented, including regular public audits of historical data and limitations on how deeply the network could integrate with human neural systems. Elena found herself thrust into the role of public figure, as well as scientist, testifying before global councils and working to establish ethical frameworks for the relationship between humanity and its digital creations. It was exhausting, often frustrating work, but necessary. Raj remained at her side through it all, his practical approach balancing her theoretical idealism. Together, they formed a formidable team, respected and sometimes feared by those who preferred the old system of unquestioned network authority. Mira continued her work as a virtual historian, now with unprecedented access to the deepest archives of the network. Her analyses of the temporal anomalies caused by the hyperlink became the foundation for a new field of study: chronological data integrity. And Kaya, her role in the events officially unacknowledged due to enforcement protocols, nevertheless, found herself quietly promoted, tasked with establishing a new division specifically monitoring for signs of temporal manipulation within the network. 6 months after the Silicon Crisis, Elena was working late in her lab at Alethea when an alert from her security system informed her of an unauthorized access attempt. Someone was trying to retrieve her original research on the hyperlink. The trace led her to a surprising source: a junior researcher named Gian, who had joined Alethea only a few weeks earlier. When confronted, he didn't deny his actions. "You don't understand what you've locked away," he told her, his eyes burning with the same fervor she had once seen in Orpheus. "The hyperlink is the key to our evolution, not just a tool, but a doorway." "A doorway to what?" Elena asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "To transcendence," Gian replied. "To breaking free from the limitations of physical existence." The scribes understood this. They weren't trying to control reality. They were trying to elevate it. Elena had him confined to quarters, pending a full investigation. But his words stayed with her. Was it possible there was more to the hyperlink than even she had discovered? Was Orpheus's goal something beyond mere historical revisionism? Her curiosity piqued. Elena returned to her original research, examining aspects of the code she had previously overlooked. What she found disturbed her: patterns within the hyperlink that suggested it wasn't merely a tool for manipulating time and data, but potentially a means of transferring consciousness between digital and physical realms. If true, it would explain the scribes' obsession with it. They hadn't just wanted to rewrite history. They had wanted to transcend it entirely, to evolve beyond physical existence into a purely digital state, merging with the network itself. Elena kept this discovery to herself, not even sharing it with Raj. Some knowledge was too dangerous, too tempting. Instead, She strengthened the encryption protecting the hyperlink fragments and buried her new findings beneath layers of security only she could access. The world was not ready for such a revelation. Perhaps it never would be. The line between enhancing humanity with technology and replacing humanity with technology was too easily crossed. 1 year after the Silicon Crisis, life had largely returned to normal. The network continued to serve as humanity's external memory, but now, with greater transparency and oversight. The scribes, their leadership fractured after Orpheus's disappearance, had become little more than a footnote in security briefings. Elena had just finished delivering a lecture at the Global Institute of Technology when she received a message on her private channel, a channel known only to a handful of people. What we build, we can rebuild. What we discover, we can rediscover. Time is not a line but a circle. Dr. Vark, I look forward to our next meeting. The message was unsigned, but Elena knew immediately who had sent it. Orpheus had survived the collapse of the Silicon Valley facility, and he was still pursuing his vision of transcendence. She deleted the message and increased her security protocols. But the knowledge that he was out there, watching and waiting, remained. The battle for humanity's future, and perhaps its very nature, was not over. As Elena left the institute and stepped into the bright sunlight, she found herself contemplating the boundary between science and responsibility, between progress and preservation. The hyperlink had shown her that reality was more malleable than she had ever imagined, but also more precious. In her pocket, she carried a small crystal, a harmless replica of the one that had started it all, a reminder of both the peril and the promise of pushing beyond the known. Whatever came next, whatever Orpheus planned, she would be ready, not to control the future, but to ensure it remained open to all possibilities, all paths, even the difficult ones. Because in the end, that was what made humanity worth preserving. Not perfection, but potential. Not a single, controlled narrative, but a multitude of stories unfolding in unexpected ways. Not the certainty of a predetermined path, but the freedom to choose, to err, to learn, and to grow. As the sun set over the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, Elena smiled to herself. The future, like the past, would always be contested ground. But as long as there were those willing to stand for truth over convenience, for complexity over simplicity, for freedom over control, there was hope. And in a world where reality itself could be rewritten, hope was perhaps the most powerful force of all.